You might call it the world according to Fareed Zakaria. He's in conversation with our Kelefa Sanneh.
I feel like I'm interrupting office hours.
Well,
Do you feel like the professor here in your office about to go teach a class?
well, I do think of, I've always thought of journalism as sort of, at some level, public education.
As host of GPS, Global Public Square, on CNN, 60-year-old Fareed Zakaria says he's teaching international relations to the masses.
It's now all virtual.
In a digital studio with plasma screen walls, Zakaria dives into global issues with scholars, U.S. presidents, and even the occasional celebrity.
When I move my body just like this.
No shouting allowed.
Are you willing to compromise?
Zakaria is an optimist, and he'd like to think of himself as nonpartisan.
It seems like it's hard for any news anchor to go on TV and say, it's none of your business whether I support Trump or not.
The weirdness of the Trump presidency and candidacy and such being such an assault on traditional American, I would argue, mores and norms, and the lies, the constant lying, and so you feel as though you're not actually taking a side when you say that this guy is lying, but it sounds like you're taking a side, right? And then he attacks you.
Now you're in the ring.
So now you're in the ring whether you want to be or not.
Is that uncomfortable for you? I get the sense that you did not get into this in order to become a partisan figure.
I don't pretend that I don't have views,
Right.
But it's my analysis rooted in fact, rooted in history.
Do you consider yourself a liberal?
I find that on most issues these days, I'm left of center. When I was in college, I was a Reaganite. I was more right of center. I'm going to make a little raita. It's very simple. You grate the cucumber, you put yogurt in, and you then add a little cumin, a little garlic, lemon juice.
And is this something you would have grown up eating in India?
Oh yeah,
as a
very
boy?
much so.
Born in Mumbai to Rafiq, a politician, and Fatima, a journalist and editor, Fareed came to America to go to college on a scholarship.
Yale, which is where I went, nobody had heard of it. My dad, to his dying day, could never pronounce Yale. He would always call it Ale.
Ale.
Ale. So he'd be like, how are things at Ale?
When you first arrived on campus at Yale, was your idea that you're going to get an education in the U.S. and then go back to India?
Yeah. But very quickly, I have to confess, I kind of fell in love with America.
He went on to Harvard, getting a PhD in political science in 1993.
If you keep your fingers like this.
And, on the side, a culinary education.
I learned how to cook by watching Jacques Pepin on public television.
By 28, he was managing editor of Foreign Affairs magazine. In 2000, he joined Newsweek as a columnist.
You initially supported the Iraq War, and you later came to regret that.
In this case, I think I lost my judgment because as somebody who grew up Muslim, I was worried that I was not going to seem sufficiently, tough on Muslim dysfunction. So there was a part of me that I think wanted to show my patriotic credentials.
In 2015, he called the Iraq War, quote, a failure and a terrible mistake.
I think the U.S. lost enormous credibility. It turned out to be a massive waste of American resources, of American lives.
During those years, Zakaria seemed to be everywhere, a widely read print columnist and also a TV host, first on PBS and then, starting in 2008, on CNN.
Welcome to the very first edition of Global Public Square.
But in 2012, he was accused of plagiarism.
You were briefly suspended by Time and by CNN. What did you learn then?
I've had these setbacks, and initially, you get defensive and you say to yourself, wait a minute. And then you have to step back and say to yourself, was this at the level of quality that I would be comfortable with? And the answer is no. And so I just said to myself, okay, I'm going to be 3 times more careful.
In his new book, Age of Revolutions, Zakaria writes about how societies embrace change and resist it too.
You have the information revolution, which connects everybody. And then you have, at the same time, over the last 30 or 40 years, this identity revolution, where all of a sudden, whether it's your sexual orientation, whether it's your national origin, whether it's the color of your skin, you're saying, I want to be able to be me. And of course, what has happened is it has left a lot of people deeply unmoored, anxious, feeling like their world is going away. And now we're living through the backlash.
Right.
And it's sort of how well you can navigate that backlash is really what determines whether you'll succeed or fail in the end.
He says the speed of recent changes has unsettled the country.
We have this group of people in America who feel that they are not benefiting from all the changes in society. And that worries me a lot. But there is a kind of anti-Americanism at the heart of this. I mean, you can't love your country and hate everything about it.
Zakaria is not just an observer. He speaks with world leaders regularly, both on air and off.
Do you talk to President Biden?
He's occasionally called me into the White House to talk about what I think is going on in the world.
Are you reassured by what you hear from him in private, both his ideas but also his fitness for the office?
Yeah, when I have talked to him one-on-one or in a small group, he's alert, he's sharp, he's wise, I would say, most importantly. I think he is performing his job as president extremely well. Now, can you have the energy to hustle on the campaign trail? That's hard.
Fareed Zakaria says he didn't want Biden to run for re-election. Now that the campaign is underway, he thinks the choice is obvious. But he says it's not easy to be an optimist these days.
I worry a lot about what is happening in America right now. There was sort of guidance, there were gatekeepers, and part of this revolutionary age is that's all gone away. And what you're finding is that there is no self-regulatory mechanism, that there's no way that you can somehow say, no, this is beyond the pale. I will return to my optimism. We will find a way, but this is a very rocky period.